pour tenir tête à Donald Trump avec la force. Un nouveau gouvernement conservateur va rétablir la promesse du Canada, la promesse que n'importe qui de n'importe où peut accomplir ses rêves avec du travail, que travailler fort vous donne une belle vie, dans une belle maison, dans un quartier sécuritaire, protégé par nos braves soldats sous notre fier drapeau. Le Canada d'abord, pour faire changement. Thank you very much, everyone. It's great to be here in Vaughan, and I want to start by thanking the incredible workers behind me, the people who literally build the homes with their own hands. You're gonna be swinging a lot more hammers and building a lot more homes very soon, because we have a Canada First plan that is going to get it done and bring it home. But unfortunately, I have to begin with some bad news. In nearby Ajax, a Muslim woman was recently attacked at the Ajax library. She was totally innocent, and she was attacked by a monster, a nasty perpetrator who once again had been released. This is a person who had been released after threatening people with a machete, but after she pleaded guilty, she was sentenced not to jail, but probation. This is the increasingly common story after the lost Liberal decade of crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder in our streets. Electing the Liberals to a fourth term in power will only mean that crime and chaos will run rampant here and everywhere across the country. What we need is a government that puts law-abiding Canadians first for a change by making sure that repeat offenders become permanently ineligible for bail, probation, parole, or house arrest. It will be jail, not bail. Jail, not bail when I'm Prime Minister. Yeah. You agree with that? Absolutely. And thank you very much to the people of Vaughan, great people in this wonderful community. I want to thank George and Nicole, who are legends in the home building industry, who are hosting us today in their wonderful development. This community has so much potential that has so far, though, been unrealized because of the lost Liberal decade that has doubled housing costs. I want to talk today about my plan to change this and to bring home safety and affordability to communities just like this one. Now, before I do that, though, I want to just say that I want to challenge Mark Carney to show up for the debate at TVA in Quebec. He's running away and hiding because he believes that he's too weak to defend the lost Liberal decade or explain why he thinks Liberals deserve a fourth term. Let's have a debate in French where we put together the choice. Either a fourth Liberal term after costs and crime have gone up and our economy has gone down under the American thumb, or putting Canada first for a change with a new Conservative government that will build the homes. I'll even pay Mr. Carney's fee so that he can show up. We'll take that excuse away from him. Conservatives will even pay the fee to bring him out if he's not afraid. And by the way, if he is afraid to have the debate, how is he going to have the courage to stand up against Donald Trump? It's going to take someone who's strong enough to do that. And if he's not afraid, then he'll show up at that debate. I'm not afraid, and I'm ready to enjoy that debate with him. And one of the things we will be debating is the Liberal housing crisis. Because after the lost Liberal decade, housing costs have doubled. They've risen faster than in any other G7 country. Toronto and Vancouver are now the most expensive housing markets in all of North America, worse than New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Seattle. In fact, many cities that have more income, more people, and less land have much more affordable homes. Before the lost Liberal decade, it took 25 years to pay off a mortgage. Now in Toronto, it takes 29 years to save up for a down payment. Before the Liberal lost decade, the average house price in Canada was $450,000, an almost laughably small sum of money. That was when I was housing minister, and those were the results we have. But today, if you live in Vancouver, you need to earn $250,000 to get qualified to buy the average house. Here in Toronto, it's $220,000. Liberals caused the housing crisis by inflating demand with out-of-control immigration and money printing, and blocking supply with taxes and bureaucracy that stop home builders. Now, it's very interesting that the worst housing inflation of the lost Liberal decade happened after Mark Carney became Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. It was in 2020 when that began, and the housing costs in the 2 years after Carney took over as the economic advisor went from $533,000 to $835,000. And in case there's any doubt about this, let me quote from the Financial Post headline in 2017. Canada's housing bubble can be traced back to Mark Carney and his bias for easy money policy. It's not just the Financial Post, it's London's Daily Telegraph, which comments on Mark Carney's time as the governor there, where he caused a housing crisis in that country. They said that he had the, quote, reverse Midas touch. The former governor of the Bank of England has left a trail of destruction behind his glossy jobs. The Telegraph also reported that just as he did when he kick-started the housing crisis in Canada, Mr. Carney was once again printed too much money in the wake of the financial crisis. And as housing prices ballooned, economists criticized him for a, quote, missed opportunity to make homes more affordable. Quoting again the Telegraph, by the time he left office, Carney had created a mess which his successors have struggled to clean up. But Carney wasn't finished wrecking the housing market at that point. He brought his knack for inflating housing costs to Brookfield. In a report by the Office of the Canadian Federal Housing Advocate from 2022, Brookfield was criticized as being one of the leading North American companies engaged in predatory financialization of the real estate market. This is when a giant corporation like Brookfield buys up rental properties, makes a few cosmetic changes, and then raises rents substantially with the knowledge that residents cannot move and will be forced to absorb the costs. He's still invested in Brookfield, which profits from predatory financialization. How is Mark Carney ever going to combat greedy corporations ripping off our working class when he's profiting from it and when he still has those investments knowingly? That's why it's time for Mr. Carney to come clean about all of his investments, reveal his conflicts, which he admits that he has. And instead, we need a Prime Minister who will stand up for the Canadian people and not for those who profit off of inflation. After the lost Liberal decade, for the first time in the history, the dream of home ownership is lost for a generation, at least lost for now. In BC and Ontario, the cost of a new home, 30% of the cost of a new home, though, is just taxes. More money for a new home goes to bureaucrats in office buildings than goes to these builders who actually build the homes. It's incredible. And the people who build the homes cannot afford to live in them. That is fundamentally unjust, and it will only get worse with a fourth Liberal term. And home building is down. Toronto construction was down 38% last year. Vancouver down 16%. Ottawa down 21%. Winnipeg down 7%. And it's not going to get better after the fourth term. Today, the worst immigration minister in the history of the country, who also happens to be the worst housing minister in the history of the country, Sean Fraser, announced that after 10 years helping bring about the lost Liberal decade, he will be running again for Mark Carney. So you're going to have the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal strategists, making the same Liberal promises as they did to bring about the housing crisis if they're elected for a fourth term. Mr. Fraser was the one that brought the Century Initiative into immigration policy, a policy designed to increase our population to 100 million. With this massive uncontrolled population growth, he helped contribute to creating this crisis in the first place, and now Mark Carney and the Liberals say that he should be back. Now, the reason all of this is the reason why I announced about 7 or 8 months ago that a Conservative government would put our country first by eliminating GST on all homes up to $1 million. I then brought that idea to the House of Commons in a motion, and 100% of Liberal MPs voted against it. They unanimously opposed the idea, and they could have done it. They could have implemented it. Mr. Carney even could have implemented it last week before he called the election. They did not. If they're elected to a fourth term, they will never do it. But the problem has gotten even worse since I made that announcement. Now, $1 million is not enough to get the average home in many markets. It's almost surreal, isn't it? You know, 10 years ago, $1 million would have got you a castle on a mountain overlooking a valley of gold. 10 years ago, $1 million home was for the extremely rich. Now, these homes like this, often go for more than $1 million. It is astonishing. It's almost hallucinogenic how badly the Liberals have destroyed our housing market, and with it, the Canadian promise. But we have to adapt. As Liberals make problems worse, Conservatives push further to make things better. And that's why, in acknowledging the Liberal housing crisis has worsened since October, I'm announcing that a new Conservative government will put Canada first by taking GST, the federal sales tax, off of all homes under $1.3 million. We will axe the tax so that every Canadian can buy a new home tax-free. That will spark 360,000 extra homes every single year, boost our GDP by $2.5 billion, create tens of thousands of jobs for our builders right behind me, and also for our forestry workers who will get back out into our forests, harvesting our wonderful lumbers, turning towering timbers into 2x4s that will uphold these wonderful homes. We'll build Canadian homes with Canadian lumber, Canadian trades workers doing the job. This will mean a savings of up to $65,000 on a new home, or $3,000 less in annualized mortgage payments. Real savings for Canadians will be also compounded as we incentivize municipalities to free up land, speed up permits, and cut development charges to build 15% more per year. We will sell off 15% of federal buildings and land to build homes. We will reject the Liberal Century Initiative that would increase our population to 100 million. And instead, we will cap immigration so that population growth never exceeds the growth in the housing stock. We will also cut income taxes by 15% so that the average working family has an extra $2,000 to make their mortgage payments and afford a home. After a lost Liberal decade, with costs and crime up and our economy down under the American thumb, Canada cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. It is time for us to put Canada first for a change, with a new Conservative government that will remove gatekeepers, cut taxes, build homes, build millions of homes. A government that will axe taxes, build homes, unleash resources, stop crime, and bring home the jobs that the Liberals sent south to Trump. We will stand up to the American president from a position of strength. More important than anything, we will bring home the Canadian promise. We will once again make this a country where hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful home on a safe street protected by brave troops under a proud flag. Canada first. Let's bring it home. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to take questions from the floor?
Karanjit from Redacton, good morning. My question might not be directly related to today's announcement, but it's regarding affordable healthcare.
Yes.
Earlier, Mr. Jagmeet Singh and recently Mr. Mark Carney stated that policies like dental care and pharmacare would be at risk if you became Prime Minister. Given your past opposition to expanding federal healthcare programs, do you plan to roll back these initiatives if elected?
We will protect these programs, and no one who has them will lose them. And, I would note, let's go through them one at a time. We will make sure that nobody loses their dental care. We will also, on child care, we all believe that there should be more affordable child care in this country. The Liberals, though, have imposed a massive top-down bureaucratic system that has actually meant 120,000 fewer kids have daycare spaces than when they first created the program. a third more families are struggling to get childcare spaces than when the Liberals first created this program. Now they're making even more promises on the eve of an election, and in order to get a fourth term in power after the lost Liberal decade. Why do we have worse childcare today than when the Liberals took office? Because they've imposed top-down, government knows best rules that have shut down private daycares that don't meet the government knows best model, the one-size-fits-all model, and most of the money has been consumed by bureaucracy. So while honoring the agreements on childcare with the provinces, we're going to give more freedom and flexibility to parents, providers, and provinces to support the childcare of all the kids. Why would we leave? Why do the Liberals want to leave kids out in the cold if their parents are night shift workers or work on weekends? Why do they want to leave kids out in the cold if their parents have opted for private childcare or home-based childcare? We should support all childcare options by having more flexibility. Then parents can decide which childcare options they favor. Provinces can decide how to deliver those services on the front line with more flexibility and freedom for parents, provinces, and providers. We'll massively expand the availability of childcare and reduce the bureaucracy that stands in the way. Thank you very much.
En français.
One other thing, you mentioned healthcare. I mean, after the lost Liberal decade, we have 6 million people without a family doctor, and wait lines are longer than ever. We have an obvious solution. There's the low-hanging fruit here. We have 20,000 immigrant doctors, 32,000 immigrant nurses who can't work. 85% of Filipino nurses in Canada are banned from working in nursing. This is nuts. When I went to get my eye surgery, because my glasses fell off, so I needed eye surgery, the technician there, he flies to Dubai and does 10 days back-to-back of surgeries there as a full eye doctor. But here in Canada, we won't let him work as a doctor. Then I walked around this, when I went back a year later for my checkup, I found out there were 5 full doctors at this facility who are immigrants to Canada that have to work as technicians when we have a doctor shortage. And this fellow, he actually, is it that Emirati eyeballs are different than Canadian eyeballs? Why isn't he able to do eye surgery on the Emiratis but not on the Canadians? Well, the answer is there's 7 years of bureaucracy he'd have to go through. In Toronto, they say if you have a heart attack, don't call 911. Call Uber, because the driver is probably a doctor. Why isn't he a doctor serving patients? The answer is we need a blue seal. We have it in the trades. It's called the red seal. You can take a test, prove you're qualified up to a Canadian standard, our high standards, prove you're hitting our standard. We give you a license and then get the provinces to recognize that license so that we can have thousands more doctors, nurses, and also architects, engineers, and others. That is the simplest way to get our hospitals filled up with more doctors today and reduce these wait lines. Donc, en français, on va faire en sorte que tous les soins dentaires, tous les gens qui reçoivent le soin dentaire vont le garder. On va aussi, en termes de garde d'enfants, après le décennie perdue des libéraux, il y a 120 000 plus d'enfants 120 000 moins d'enfants qui n'ont pas de place aux garderies. Il y a un tiers de plus de familles qui ont de difficultés à trouver un soin pour leurs enfants. Pourquoi? Parce que les libéraux ont imposé la paperasse et les règles qui empêchent les fournisseurs privés et les autres options communautaires. Ils ont dépensé l'argent sur la bureaucratie. Moi, je vais donner plus de liberté et de flexibilité aux provinces, aux familles et aux fournisseurs de garde d'enfants de le faire dans leur façon, incluant supporter des familles où les parents travaillent la nuit ou les fins de semaine, incluant les garderies privées et incluant les garderies aux maisons. C'est en ayant plus de flexibilité et de liberté pour les provinces et les parents que nous aurons un meilleur garde d'enfants. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Pierre. I'm Surya from Y Media.
Yes, sir.
So, Globe and Mail has done a story on election interference on Conservative leadership campaign. What are your comments on that?
Well, first of all, let's quote from that Globe and Mail article. I'm going to quote here. CSIS also did not have evidence that Mr. Poilievre or members of his inner circle were aware of these alleged actions. Then I'm going to quote the Hogue Commission, and I quote, "The Commission heard testimony about allegations of the government India interference in the Conservative Party leadership race. CSIS witnesses noted that they had no reason to believe the impacted candidates would have been aware of the alleged support." Let's be honest. I won the leadership fair and square. Even my political competitors, like Mr. Patrick Brown, have publicly testified under oath that that was the case. But I'm glad that the Liberals put this attack out today. Really glad. Because there's something that's really been worrying me. After Justin Trudeau named Mark Carney his economic advisor, giving him massive power over public policy in Canada, Mr. Carney went over for meetings in Beijing where he just had secret talks with the deputy governor of the Chinese Central Bank. 2 weeks later, Brookfield got a $250 million loan. What did they talk about? What did Mr. Carney in his role as Trudeau's economic advisor offer of China? Why would he be having secret meetings with top government-controlled bankers about getting a $250 million loan while he was supposed to be acting in Canada's interest as the Prime Minister's economic advisor? Why would he be collaborating with a hostile foreign regime that we have since learned executed 4 Canadians and took numerous Canadians hostage for a lengthy period of time? And given that Mr. Carney knows that he still owns massive financial interests in Brookfield, which owes a $250 million to a Chinese state-controlled bank, how do we know he's not going to act against our interests in favor of his financial interests? Why didn't he stand in front of this microphone and confess to Canadians that he owes the Chinese government that kind of money? Is this why he's covering up his financial interests? And given that China has murdered our people, taken our people hostage, how is he ever going to stand up to foreign interference when he is so financially compromised? We have never in our history had a weak, out-of-touch leader so terribly compromised and conflicted, whose interests go against our national interests. And I call on Mr. Carney right now to come before a microphone today and explain if this loan is still in place and if he still has those Brookfield assets that he had up until a few weeks ago. Because we cannot trust someone. Could you imagine, while you're supposed to be advising Canada's Prime Minister on the well-being of our economy, going to a foreign regime that had executed Canadian citizens, taken Canadians hostage, that it had already been public that they had interfered in multiple elections. They've done incursions into our northern waters. Mark Carney will never be able to protect our national interests because he has massive financial conflicts of interest overseas. What we need now is not to give the Liberals a 4th term with a weak and compromised leader. What we need is a Prime Minister who will put Canada first for a change. Oui. Merci pour la question. La commission, premièrement, laissez-moi citer du Globe and Mail. Les services de renseignement, non, j'essaie de traduire parce que je l'ai en anglais, mais n'ont aucune preuve que M. Poilievre ni des membres de son équipe étaient au courant des allégations en question. Et la commission Hogue a dit aussi que les témoignages qu'elle a entendus là-dessus ont montré on montrait aucune preuve que le Parti conservateur ni les candidats en question étaient au courant de l'ingérence de l'Inde. Mais soyons clairs, j'ai gagné la course à la chefferie parce que j'avais le support. C'était une victoire massive. Je n'avais pas besoin de l'aide de personne. Et M. Brown, qui s'est présenté contre moi, a témoigné dans le Parlement que l'ingérence présumée n'a eu aucun effet sur le résultat. Mais je suis très heureux que M. Carney et les libéraux ont donné cette attaque aujourd'hui. C'est intéressant, après une décennie perdue, des libéraux ont permis au Canada de devenir un pays où l'ingérence étrangère est massive et visible à travers le Canada. Et maintenant, ils essaient d'instrumentaliser cet enjeu afin de gagner un 4e mandat. Mais je suis très heureux qu'ils ont fait ça aujourd'hui parce que ça me permet de m'adresser à une préoccupation très grave que j'ai depuis longtemps. Quelques mois après que M. Trudeau a nommé Mark Carney comme son conseiller économique, M. Carney est allé en Chine, à Beijing, pour rencontrer le vice-président de la Banque centrale de la Chine. 2 semaines plus tard, Brookfield, l'entreprise dont il était le président, a reçu un prêt de 250 millions de dollars. Comment ça se fait que maintenant, M. Carney a toujours investi dans une entreprise qui doit 250 millions de dollars à une banque contrôlée par le gouvernement de la Chine? Comment ça se fait que M. Carney a utilisé son influence politique pour gagner accès au gouvernement étranger, surtout un gouvernement qu'il savait s'était ingéré dans notre politique, un gouvernement qui avait tué nos citoyens et pris en otage nos citoyens, et lui, il pensait que c'était approprié, en même temps qu'avoir un rôle formel de conseiller notre pays, notre premier ministre à l'égard de l'économie, d'y aller faire affaire. Toujours, il est investi à Brookfield. Toujours, il doit le gouvernement chinois. Comment est-ce que Mark Carney va protéger le Canada contre l'ingérence étrangère en même temps qu'il est investi dans une entreprise, toujours, qui a un prêt de 250 millions de dollars? C'est une menace pour notre pays. Il a un conflit d'intérêts. M. Carney devrait venir devant vous aujourd'hui afin d'expliquer tous ses investissements et pourquoi il a travaillé contre les intérêts du Canada pour son intérêt personnel. Nous n'avons pas besoin d'un 4e mandat libéral. Nous avons besoin d'un gouvernement, un nouveau gouvernement conservateur qui va mettre le Canada d'abord pour faire changement.
Thank you. Next question.
Brian Lilly, Toronto Sun. Last night you got an endorsement from the Boilermakers Union, a union
Yes.
that has never endorsed a federal conservative leader.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of gentlemen behind you in the trades, and I understand tonight in Hamilton you'll be
Boots,
getting...
not suits.
You'll be getting a lot more union leadership showing up tonight.
Yes.
Is this part of a plan that you've got to turn blue-collar workers blue voters?
Yes. But actually, the truth is that, these are the people who literally build our country. And they realize that after the lost Liberal decade, they can't even afford a home. We've had global elites like Mark Carney and the Liberals sell out our industrial base to send jobs to China and the United States while leaving our workers behind. The people who build our homes cannot afford to live in them. Carbon taxes make it impossible for people to pay to gas their pickup truck. And if these guys want to go out for a weekend of hunting, well, the Liberals want to ban their hunting rifle too. The good, decent, common sense values of the people who build this country are exactly what we need to fix everything that's broken. When it comes to the Boilermakers, They are very worried that Mark Carney will dismantle our energy sector through his net zero extremism, and they want to have a government that will put Canada first for a change by approving nuclear power plants, pipelines, mines, LNG plants, axing the carbon tax, the full carbon tax, including on Canadian industry. That is how we're going to bring home powerful paychecks for these incredible men and women who are coming to my support. And I will say this as well. We also need to send the message to our youth that the best jobs in the world are trades jobs. We need boots, not suits. We're going to bring back the $4,000 apprenticeship grant that the Liberals are canceling at the end of this month. We are going to put in 10 times as much resources into union training halls to train 350,000 young apprenticeships so that they can be apprentices who will become journey people. They will be building homes, building pipelines, digging mines, moving our goods, literally building this country with their own hands. They will join with us to bring home our jobs and make us strong again so we can stand up to the Americans and put our country first. Thank you. All right. OK, merci beaucoup. Bonne question. Je suis très, très honoré d'avoir l'appui des Boilermakers. Comment Radio-Canada? Pouvez-vous m'aider, Boilermaker? Très bonne question, merci. C'est moi qui pose des questions. Oui, ils travaillent dans les centrales nucléaires. On va avoir une meilleure traduction. Je m'excuse. Les Boilermakers. Les Boilermakers, on a besoin de plus de Boilermakers et je suis très heureux d'avoir leur appui. J'adore les syndicats en métier parce qu'ils ne représentent pas seulement les travailleurs, mais ils les forment. Ils donnent les emplois. Et les travailleurs veulent supporter notre plan pour mettre le Canada d'abord, y compris en approuvant les centrales nucléaires, des usines de gaz naturel, les pipelines, éliminant le taxe carbone, couper les impôts pour rembourser le travail et surtout donner les ressources pour former 350 000 plus de jeunes apprentis dans les métiers avec la contribution, la bourse de 4 000 $ pour chaque apprenti qui va être mis en place selon notre plan Canada d'abord. Il nous faut des bottes et non pas des cravates pour bâtir notre pays et c'est ce que nous allons faire comme conservateurs. Donc, je remercie fortement ce syndicat. I want to thank this wonderful union, the Boilermakers. They're one of the greatest unions in Canada. I am deeply touched to have them on side, and I hope there will be many more incredible trade unions that train up our people and build up our country to put Canada first. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now take a question from the call-in line, and this
Yes.
will be the final question.
Thank you.
Raphaël Pierrot, Journal de Montréal.
Première chose, d'abord, sur les allégations d'ingérence étrangère, je voulais savoir, M. Carney est revenu aujourd'hui en disant que vous n'avez pas encore de code de sécurité. Concernant l'allégation spécifique, je voulais savoir si détenir cette code de sécurité, faire le processus actuel, ça vous aiderait à faire la lumière là-dessus. Et sur le même sujet, est-ce que vous pensez que M. Chandra Arya, c'est lié, le fait qu'il a été écarté de Népien, que c'est lié aux allégations d'ingérence étrangère? Et finalement, sur le débat en français pour le face-à-face de TVA, je veux savoir, est-ce que vous croyez l'excuse de monsieur du Parti libéral, en fait, qui ont un malaise avec le fait de payer 75 000 $ pour participer au débat? Merci beaucoup.
I think there was 3 questions in one. He's trying to get a bulk discount here. Yeah, I'll give him 6 answers for 3 questions. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup de vos questions. Premièrement, j'ai déjà eu mon code de sécurité, mais ce que je ne vais pas faire, c'est permettre le gouvernement de me taire. Ils ne veulent pas que je sois capable de parler librement de ces enjeux-là en me forçant de signer de faire un engagement de secret. Je ne travaille pas pour le gouvernement, je suis le chef de l'opposition. Et ce que les libéraux veulent faire, c'est de m'empêcher de parler ouvertement. Par exemple, s'ils me disent quelque chose qui est de peu d'importance en privé par rapport à la Chine, ils peuvent après ça dire « Oh, vous ne pouvez pas parler de la Chine parce que maintenant vous êtes briefé et vous ne pouvez pas partager rien. » Alors c'est ça leur jeu. Et on sait qu'ils sont en train de politiser ça. C'est pour ça qu'ils ont fait une fuite politique pendant les élections. Mais la réalité, c'est que c'est M. Carney qui doit expliquer comment il va défendre les intérêts du Canada en même temps qu'il est allé en Chine recevoir un prêt de 250 millions de dollars pour son entreprise d'un gouvernement hostile qui avait tué nos citoyens, qui s'est ingéré dans notre pays et qui avait pris en otage nos propres citoyens. Les Canadiens ne peuvent pas faire confiance à M. Carney parce qu'il travaille toujours contre les intérêts de notre pays et pour l'intérêt de son compte de banque. Donc, je pense qu'il devrait publier tous ses intérêts et tous les engagements que son entreprise, dans laquelle il est toujours investi, a avec les gouvernements hostiles à l'étranger. Deuxièmement, je n'ai aucune information par rapport à M. Aria, donc c'est aux libéraux d'expliquer leur raisonnement. Troisièmement, je vais parler... en passant, ils vont simplement dire qu'ils ne peuvent pas en parler parce que c'est tout des secrets. Donc, ils veulent me faire la même chose, me forcer de ne pas parler de ces enjeux-là. Mais heureusement, je suis assez sage pour ne pas jouer leur jeu. Troisièmement, sur le débat, oui, Monsieur Carney, il fait des excuses parce qu'il a peur. Il est trop fragile pour faire des débats. Il est un chef faible qui mène un gouvernement faible, qui a rendu notre économie faible face aux Américains. Et si M. Carney est trop fragile et trop faible pour faire un débat en français chez TVA, il sera trop fragile et trop faible pour faire face à Donald Trump. En passant, je suis prêt à payer les frais pour les libéraux, donc cette excuse n'existe plus. Et j'invite Mme Elizabeth May de participer dans le débat, donc cette excuse n'existe plus. Problème réglé. J'ai hâte de voir M. Carney chez le débat. Est-ce qu'on devrait un quatrième mandat libéral ou est-ce qu'on veut un nouveau gouvernement conservateur qui va mettre le Canada d'abord? 3 questions. One, on the security clearance, I've already had a security clearance. What I will not do is because I was a cabinet minister, so I've already been cleared. What I will not do is commit to the oath of secrecy that the Liberals want to impose on me. They don't want me to be able to speak about these matters. So they bring me into a dark room and they'll say, we're going to give you a little bit of breadcrumbs of intel, and then we'll tell you you can't talk about any of this stuff anymore. So, for example, if they'd given me some kind of cursory briefing on China, then they would say, oh, you can't go talk about the fact that Mark Carney went off to Beijing and had meetings where he had secret talks with top government banking officials, after which a government bank gave his company a $250,000 loan, a loan that his company still owes, and a company in which he's still invested, meaning that he is the most compromised and conflicted leader our country has ever seen. He did this after seeing that China had interfered in 2 consecutive elections. He did this after seeing China take 2 of our people hostage. He did this after knowing that China had made incursions into our waters. How will Mark Carney ever protect Canada against Beijing's incursions into our territory, its interference in our country, or it's taking our jobs and our industrial base away when he owes them so much? And I won't be silenced on any of those issues. I look forward to hearing Mark Carney's answers. And I hope that Canadian media actually starts asking him some questions about the nature of Brookfield's holdings. It really is incredible. The media has had some of this information, and I look forward to them actually asking questions. We have a guy who's prime minister who's never been elected to anything. He's the most unscrutinized leader our country has ever had, and he's by far the most conflicted. We're putting it out ourselves from now on, by the way. This is a guy whose company denied coal miners his insurance arm denied coal miners their payments when they were dying of black lung in the States. They lost in court. The company lost in court. How is he ever going to stand up for working class people when that's the track record he has? He used rent evictions, predatory financialization of real estate. How is he ever going to fix our housing crisis when that is his background? I've said in the past that he's just as bad as Justin Trudeau. Frankly, he's much worse, and he's much more conflicted, and he's going to be held accountable. On the debate, well, his excuses are changing from day to day. Mark Carney says he doesn't want to debate because there's a fee. Well, I'll pay the fee. He says that he doesn't want to debate because Elizabeth May has not been invited. Well, I'll invite her. So let's invite Elizabeth May. I'll pay the fee, so Mark Carney can't afford to pay $75,000. Conservatives are generous. We'll pay it for him. But if he's still too weak and fragile to debate at TVA, then he's too weak and fragile to stand up to Donald Trump and for our country. The debate is simple. Do we want a fourth Liberal term after the lost Liberal decade, or do we want a new Conservative government that will put Canada first for a change? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's press conference.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Great to see you.